Hello, today I have Debbie with me. Hi, Debbie. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so yes, I'm Debbie, but I write under D. Wells, and I am an author of uh, commercial / reading group fiction, which focuses mostly on families and multi-generational storylines. I've got 2 novels published, and I've got a 3rd coming out in June.
Did you always know that you wanted to write?
Yes. Yeah, I still remember the moment. I was about 8 years old, and I remember I used to visit the school library almost every lunchtime. And I remember just one day it hit me, I just saw the books in my line of vision, and it just struck me that that's what people do for a job. I can do that for a job. So that was it. From then on, I just wanted to write.
And when did you actually take the plunge and decide, now that's it, I'm going to go for it?
I think it was probably around 2010. I was pregnant with our first child, and so I was going to be home for a little while. So it was like, well, now I'm going to actually get stuck in and write something. Obviously, having no idea how little time I'd actually have to do that with a baby. So it was a few years before something got finished. But that was kind of the moment to actually switch from just day jobs and just paying the bills to, well, writing and not earning much. So that's been a process as well. So yeah, so it's been since then, really.
And what made you choose that particular genre?
It's been a process, actually. I started, C. Wells is a pen name. I started writing under my real name, just testing the market, really. And I was writing more kind of romantic fiction, which just, I enjoyed reading it, but it didn't quite sit right with me writing it. I just didn't feel it was quite me. So I just, over time, I just felt more drawn to those kind of family saga type books where there's, you know, secrets and things to overcome, and just I think I'm just fascinated by different relationship dynamics and not necessarily all romantic. And it just went from there, really.
You had to do a lot of research for your books, or was it just people watching?
Well, with my first novel, 6 Caledon Street, I had a dual timeline with that one. So it was based in the address, the house, with a modern timeline and a timeline to the original occupants who were in the Edwardian period. So I did quite a lot of research then, and I'm quite fascinated by that period anyway. So I got to watch Downton Abbey and all the like fun stuff. And then I did some more kind of deep dive research after that. And so, yeah, I did a lot of research there. And then my latest novel, The Things We Regret, we see the grandmother's story and the granddaughters. And the grandmother, we go right back to post-war Britain. So I did quite a bit of research into that as well. So yeah, bits and pieces, yeah.
What's the most interesting thing that you've come across when you've been doing that research?
I think I just find the whole Second World War era fascinating, just everything. And I was researching, because the second novel is set in Cornwall, and I was researching and found out that they had prisoner of war camps in Cornwall, which isn't very well known now. I think there was something like 5, but they ended up, I think they were quite kind of open in that the men would then work in the fields, and they eventually became part of the community. So it wasn't like they were being starved and dreadfully treated. They were put to work, but that was quite fascinating. I had no idea that existed.
No, neither did I. Wow. You had to wonder how that's not common knowledge. I'm really shocked. If you were going to take a character from any of your books out for a meal, who would you choose and what would you ask them?
Wow. of the novels I've published so far, I would say Edie, the grandmother in The Things We Regret. She is a real prickly character. She doesn't suffer fools gladly. And to be honest, I would probably be quite intimidated by her in real life, because I'm not someone who likes conflicts, and I'm quite introverted. But I don't know what I'd ask her. I think the whole theme of the book is she doesn't open up, and she kind of holds on to things, and she inadvertently causes this kind of rift in the family. I'd probably try and get her to open up and try to deal with those issues before they wreck her relationships. It probably wouldn't work, but
do you put any of yourself into your characters?
Yeah, I think so. My one coming out in June is based in a bookshop, and I do have experience working in a bookshop, so I've brought a little bit of that into it. And the main character, Evelyn, she's kind of got that introverted nature, and she loves history and loves going to castles and things like that, which is kind of a bit like me.
Awesome, yeah, can't beat it. What's one of the most fun scenes that you've written, and what was one of the most difficult?
Oh, goodness. Fun scenes. Oh, that's hard. I put my characters through it. Yeah, I think probably in the bookshop there's some good fun scenes, because it's building relationship, and Evelyn's got this kind of cast of staff members who've all got their own little things going on. There's some fun scenes with her sister, who she doesn't get on with very well, so they just spark off of each other. I find it really hard to choose one. The hard scenes, there's some quite heart-wrenching ones, especially in The Things We Regret, when we see what's happened to Edie. And where I don't know if I can say without giving it away, but where she's suffered bereavement, and those were quite hard to write. But the only scene that's made me like burst into tears was like right at the end, where she's regretting the things that she's done, and where she hasn't repaired things. And I just burst into tears when I wrote that scene of everything. I was like, oh. Why didn't you listen? But yeah, I think that was probably quite tough to write that bit.
Because you wrote it that way, that's why.
And it's funny, you can detach yourself when you're writing those hard things. If they happen in real life, you'd be in pieces, but you can somehow detach yourself, and it's a strange thing.
Do you hide any secret jokes or messages or Easter eggs in your book?
No, I don't think so. I kind of, in my earlier ones, I do try and have an Arthur in every book, just as a really minor character, because my granddad was called Arthur, and he was just my favorite grandparent. I probably shouldn't say that, but he was just such a lovely man, and just such gentle nature. And I think there's kind of a little bit of him in some of the male characters that I write as well. But I do try and have an Arthur. But I have stopped that now, and I switched over to a Betty, and you'll see a Betty in some of my books, which is my husband's gran. She died about 6 years ago, and she was 92. And she was such a character. She used to play the didgeridoo. She released an album at 82. She was an opera singer, or operatic voice rather. She used to sing to the birds in the garden and do pottery and paint, and she was just absolute ball to be around. So yeah.
It sounds like it. Oh wow. And since you started writing, what have you found more difficult than you expected, and what have you found easier?
The promoting and marketing is always a challenge, especially you're not naturally into social media, which I'm not. So that can be difficult. However, at the same time, it's been great because I've found groups like this, and they're so supportive, and it's just wonderful to build that community. So yeah, so pros and cons. Yeah, the easiest thing, I think when I start writing, it's kind of, you've got that urgency to write and you just want to get it down, and it's just going really well till you get about halfway through, and then it's like, okay, how do I get to the end now? So yeah, I love that first half of writing, it just flows.
And when you're editing, what's your most overused word or phrase?
I've just finished my third draft, which is my repetitive edit. I overuse a lot of things. There's a lot of unnecessary adverbs like briefly and really and silently, quietly, things like that. And it's like, it's just so unnecessary. Yeah, I think it's probably more the adverbs. I realise just how much I do overuse them. But they're sorted now. I've just got rid of loads.
You aren't the only one, don't worry. I've had that quite a lot. Have you made lots of author friends?
I have done, yes. I think the first author group I was part of was Lizzie Chantry's group, or Chantry rather. She and we've met at a couple of events as well. She's quite local to me. So, and then there's Anita Faulkner and her group. So there's lots of authors there, Emma Jackson and Kilty Jackson, and who else am I? Florence Healing, and you know, this is where my mind goes blank and they all fly out. Lots.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I try to promote most of the authors that I know on Twitter today, and I had to keep going back and then adding some more and adding some more, and I still miss some, I think. And I feel terrible, but oh my God, there's so many.
There are so many, but it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. And do you get a lot of feedback from your readers?
I do, yes. It's growing slowly but surely, and that's always nice as well. So with each book that comes out, there's that kind of increase in audience and the people who keep coming back, which is such a privilege to have people come back and keep reading. So yeah, it's growing, but it's quite early days, you know. Second novel, so it'll be a while yet before it's kind of built up. But yeah.
Have you had any particularly strange, funny, or poignant feedback?
When I was still writing short stories, I wrote a Christmas short story, and it was very typically Christmassy. You know, that's the whole point. So I get a 1-star review saying, "Oh, such a cliche." And I was like, well, it's meant to be. It's a Christmas book. It's meant to be as tacky and cheesy and Christmassy as you need it to be. So that did make me giggle. It was my first star 1-star review as well. So it was quite nice to have one that I could actually laugh at and not feel dreadful about. So.
Yeah. Oh, people, there's no hope, is there? It's just, yeah, this is. Since you decided to sit down and write your book, what's been your absolute standout moment?
Standout moment. Yeah. I had with my first novel, I just released it. I didn't really do much publication stuff for it. I was just about to have a baby, so I was like, just get it out of the way. So with my second novel, I had quite a big kind of publication day party online, and it was just all day. It was just incredible. And I think for me, that was like when I felt like, okay, I'm an author now, you know. This is properly happening now. So yeah, that was probably the big standout moment so far.
And what's your biggest dream? what do you really want to achieve as a writer?
Oh, it's changed a bit over the years, because with each manuscript I've sent out to agents and publishers, and then I've usually end up self-publishing again and go through the process. And I've got one out at the moment that I'm trying to get a publisher for, and I always thought that was going to be the goal, to get that publishing deal. And like with my second novel, I never planned to self-publish that. It was definitely going to be the one that got the agent and the publisher. And it spent 2 years and heavy edits later to actually decide to self-publish. And I'm really pleased I did, because the feedback's been great. But I always thought it would be that very black and white, get a book deal and go through that process. And now I'm actually happy having hopefully a foot in each camp eventually. There are certain manuscripts that I write now that I look at and think, well, actually that would do well self-published, whereas this one would do better if I can find a publisher for it. So I think I'm just going to push both doors and become a hybrid author for now, and hopefully it can be something that I could do full time and keep. So yeah, that's where I'm headed for now.
Yeah, that seems to be really common as well now, actually, doing a hybrid, doing some self and some with a publisher.
Yeah,
seems to work quite well. So
yeah.
If you're able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend the day with?
There's so many, but I still feel the loss of Michael Crichton. He died quite young, but he had a massive back. Think of the word right now, but I just loved how he was able to bring his science knowledge and his medical background and all of that into his books and still make it so entertaining and so informative. And he was quite controversial with a lot of his writing. He didn't hold back at raising questions about certain theories and things like that, which I think these days it's kind of people are too scared to do. He really push boundaries, and I would love just to be able to sit. He would be so smart. I'd just sit and listen, I think. But I think yeah, it makes me sad just talking about it. I wish he had done a few more novels. And yeah, that would great to have dinner with him and ask questions.
If you get any free time between being a mum and writing, what do you like to do with it?
I enjoy photography, and I enjoy getting out in the countryside. I'm a real country bumpkin, so any excuse. We're currently living in the city, but it's quite near the countryside, so I head out as often as I can. Try and get up near to where I grew up, and which was right in the countryside. And I just like being out in nature and, like I said, going to castles and things like that. Although I've not done a lot of that since the pandemic, but I enjoy good food and drink and being with friends and as well. I'm quite a homebody otherwise, but yeah.
If you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you like to go?
Wow. I think the 20s and early 1930s would be fascinating. They're kind of sandwiched between the Great Depression and Second World War, like in the good bit. Selfishly, when things are going well. But I am just very fascinated by that whole period. And I think from the kind of mid-40s onwards, very depressed era because of the war, but that would have been when my grandparents were born. So I kind of would have liked to have seen, just for a few days, just hang about there for a bit.
Yeah, my nan was born in 1938, so she doesn't really remember the war. She remembers some bits, but my granddad was born in 1927, so he remembers more, and it's fascinating hearing. And they talk about it with such fondness. So yeah, it really would be interesting to go and see what they experienced when they grew up. So yeah, I agree. And the clothes and the cool music and stuff and the dancing, and
I love the clothes and the hairdos and
yeah, totally agree. If a genie was to grant you 3 wishes, what would you wish for?
It's going to be really practical, boring stuff, I reckon. Yeah, I would. Well, a book deal would be nice. A house. We've been renting the last 4 years. We did own. We were living overseas, and then we came back, and then all our money was gone getting back. So it'd be nice to have a house that can be the family home where the kids grow up. And I think, a big one for me would be to move back to the countryside properly. We're almost there. We're looking, but there's been a few delays the last couple of years. So
yeah, of course, yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? But yeah. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Ooh. I'll go right back to childhood. It would be one of the. It was always between Robbie and Mark, and take that. Couldn't quite decide which one. In my teens, then I moved on to Bono and the edgier ones. There was I can't really. Yeah, it was probably Bono in my teens, and maybe the guys from Blur as well.
Yeah, I was always Robbie, and my mum always liked Mark Owen from Take That. And then I think I liked Five, the guy from Five that's really tattooed now, that has tattoos all over his faces. So faces. Face. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point actually, because people ask me that because I ask it and I'm like, I don't know, I don't remember. It's a long time ago. But yeah, maybe Robbie Williams would be my answer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a long time ago. Yeah. Well, Mark Owen was always cute as well. Yeah. So did you say you're working on book 4, is it? Because 3 you've got coming out in June.
Yes. Yeah, my husband asks me this every day. I have to write down which book I'm referring to. Yeah, number 3 is coming out in June, and I've got book 4 is the one I'm sending out to agents at the moment, and book 5 would be the sequel to book 3, which I've just started writing.
And then do you have plans to keep, have you got lots of ideas that you want to keep writing still?
Yes. At the moment, I'm with novel 3. It will be the first in at least 3 books. I've never written a series before, but it wasn't meant to be. I got to the end of writing it and I was like, hang on, I could carry on with this, and there's things I still want to happen to the characters. So yes, I still need to write a second and third for that at least. Ideas beyond that, they'll come. They always drop into my head when I'm least expecting it, so I've got no doubt that they will.
Well, I can't think of any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us about.
I'm not good at making the questions.
Well, I mean, if there's anything glaring that you think, well, she hasn't asked me that, so I'll tell them. But if there isn't, then that's
You've been very thorough. You've been very thorough.
I like to think so. I like to think I've teased all of your most intimate secrets out of you. Otherwise, I've failed. So would you just like to tell everyone where they can find more about you and where they can get your books from?
Sure. I have a Facebook page, Dee Wells Author. I also have a website as well, deewells.weebly.com, I think it is. really need to get that down. But you can find my books on Amazon. So if I show you the cover, then you might just recognize it when you go on. And then there's 6 Caledon Street as well. Those are my 2 novels, and yeah, they're both on Amazon, paperback and Kindle.
Yes, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Donna.